And thanks for being with us now as we recap what happened today in the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh, the disgraced attorney accused of shooting and killing his wife Maggie and his son Paul in June of 2021. Now, as we go through the testimony, we're also going to bring in a criminal defense attorney to talk about what happened in court today to get his take on everything. The focus this afternoon was cell phones from the crime scene. Previous testimony indicated that Maggie Murdaugh's phone was found about a half mile or so from the crime scene, but today we learned late this afternoon that somebody was holding Maggie's phone around the time she was shot. A witness testifying the phone's camera was activated around 8:54 that evening, but it was only on for a second or two. The witness adding that the phone recorded several orientation changes over the next several moments. And again, as we mentioned, that phone was found about a half mile away from the crime scene. News 19's Sam Perez was in the courtroom today. She has more on today's testimony.
In Tuesday's court proceedings, a handful of witnesses took the stand, including more crime scene investigators and experts who talked about their efforts to gain access to the victims' phones. It picked up with more questioning of SLED agent Jeff Croft, who began the morning being cross-examined by the defense after his testimony on Monday. He was asked about his search of guns and ammunition at Moselle, the Murdaugh family's hunting property where Maggie and Paul were found shot to death.
The shot that blew Paul Murdaugh's head off was Winchester dry lock, steel waterfowl, 12 gauge ammunition. And you didn't find any similar ammunition at Moselle on June the 8th or any time after that, correct?
I did not, sir.
I mean, did it shock you to see that many guns? They were all hunting guns, were they not?
It did not shock me to see that many hunting guns.
On redirect, Croft told prosecuting attorney Creighton Waters that he did find guns with mixed loads in their chambers, similar to the suspected murder weapons, which have not been located. Croft also testified about investigators finding the phone of Murdaugh's wife on the side of a road near Moselle after her death. The defense asked whether they placed the device in a Faraday bag, which law enforcement can use to block cell phone signals. Croft said instead he placed the phone on airplane mode. The defense implied this showed the evidence wasn't protected, but the prosecution maintains Faraday bags aren't the only way to keep phones safe. Custodian of records for Verizon, Michael Anthony Neck, took the stand and explained to the courtroom a spreadsheet showing calls made and received on Maggie and Alex Murdaugh's phones. John Van Houten with the Secret Service explained the process of guessing a phone password using special software, which helped him access Paul Murdaugh's phone.
We're limited to an attempt of 146, maybe 145 attempts per day. So a 4-digit code has a maximum possible numeric value of 10,000 attempts. So at 146 attempts a day, it would roughly take a little over 2 months to 68 days to unlock that phone. Adding 2 extra numbers to a 6-digit, going from a 4-digit to a 6-digit, there are approximately 1 million possibilities now. At 146 attempts per day, it could take upwards 19 years.
But Van Houten said he was able to unlock Paul's phone successfully by guessing a significant date. When it came to Maggie's phone, the defense says Alex Murdaugh gave investigators the password. Lieutenant Britt Dove with SLED testified he extracted and verified information on Maggie and Alex's phones. Reporting in Walterboro, Sam Perez, News 19 WLTX.
Now, also today, some testimony surrounded an interview SLED agents had with Alex Murdaugh 3 days after the shooting deaths. Agent Jeff Croft, who you just saw in that report, testifying that during the interview of Murdaugh, he said, "I did him so bad," in reference to his son Paul. But the defense attorney, Jim Griffin, argued in the tape, or in court on the tape, that Murdaugh actually said they did him so bad. They played the tape multiple times for the jury.
What was captured on the body cam. Are you 100% confident that Alex said, "I did him so bad," rather than "they did him so bad"?
I'm 100% confident in what I heard and I interpreted him as saying.
But you would agree that this jury can hear the same thing you heard on June the 10th by playing what was captured on the body cam or the recording equipment in Agent Owen's car, right?
Yes, sir.
It was just so bad. They did it so bad.
All right, back it up and play it in real time again, Doug, real time.
Or not easy. I know it's hard. And sitting here talking today is tough.
It's just so bad. They did it so bad.
Again, Sam Perez from earlier today. Now, after this, Griffin asked to play the tape at 1/3 speed. Agent Croft saying again he heard Murdaugh say, "I," and not "they." Also on that witness stand today, Department of Natural Resources agent John Benfield, a second cousin of Murdaugh's. He took the stand testifying that he built 300 blackout rifles for Murdaugh. Prosecutors say this type of weapon was used to kill Maggie Murdaugh. Benfield told defense attorneys that he has recommended this type of weapon for hunting wild hogs.
How many blackouts, AR-style rifles, did you make for Alex Murdaugh?
3,
And when was that last one made?
2018,
April?
April of 2018.
That you recommended that these 300 blackouts be used for hog hunting?
Yes, sir.
And is that, I mean, in this part of the state, are wild hogs kind of a nuisance to game management, property management?
A severe nuisance. Yes, sir.
Do you have any estimate how many 300 blackouts you've sold over the last 4 or 5 years?
No, sir. I wouldn't. I've a little over 600 firearm transfers. I wouldn't know.
And as we continue to follow the trial as it unfolds, we are getting analysis from experts right here in the Midlands. Taylor Bell, he is a criminal defense attorney here in the Columbia area. I want to thank you for coming in tonight to give us your take on this. All right, let's go with what happened this morning. It was a matter of what was said to the sled agents. I did him so bad, or they did him so bad. Of course, the defense is saying it is they, prosecution saying I. What did you hear?
Well, I've watched it and listened to it several times myself, and I would have to go with the defense on this. That it was they. I believe the response by Croft was a bit disingenuous, not giving any leeway. But at the end, he did say it was up to the jury to decide that.
And how could this factor in as we go along in this trial?
Well, I think it's going to take away from the credibility of that agent himself by not giving any leeway on what he heard, that he could have been making a mistake, even after having listened to it again in front of the jury. And I think that's going to take away some credibility of him when the jury goes back in the jury room and deliberates. They're going to remember that, and they're going to be able to watch it themselves, listen to it numerous times. They can play it as many times as they like back there, and they're going to make the decision themselves. And if they decide different from him, I think it's going to take away from his credibility.
Two different types of weapons used in these slayings, a rifle and a shotgun. And as of tonight, I don't believe either murder weapon has been found, correct?
That's my understanding. My understanding that all the weapons that were tested, that were found at the hunting lodge, none of them came back to match the ammunition that was used in these murders.
Benfield taking the stand, though, a second cousin of Murdaugh's, the first relative of Murdaugh's that we've heard from on the witness stand during this trial, testifying that he actually made a gun, though, similar to one that the prosecution believes was used to kill Maggie Murdaugh. How significant is that testimony today?
So he testified that he actually, I think, made 3 weapons, and that 2 of them had not been found. One originally was lost. 2 were purchased by Alec at Christmas time several years back, and it had been lost by Paul, and then he repurchased another one. I think, you know, that the prosecution is going to use that to their advantage, saying that one of the weapons was you know, thrown away somewhere. However, you know, I don't know what kind of search they did for the weapon beyond where they're at so far looking in the hunting lodge.
Speaking of throwing away, Maggie Murdaugh's cell phone found about a half mile or so from the crime scene. Some of this testimony today indicating that someone was either using her phone or trying to use her phone or moving her phone this afternoon. Can you tell us what they were trying to prove in court today?
So I think they're trying to lay a timeline of when she was alive, and when she was murdered, and try to lay that timeline out with the cell phone data and the cell phone records from whether it be the Verizon subpoenas that they sent out, or whether it be the extractions from the actual devices themselves. And I think they're trying to lay a timeline to poke holes in the alibi that Alex's attorneys are trying to lay out there.
As a criminal defense attorney, how do you think both sides are doing in this trial so far?
Well, I think today I would chalk up a win for the defense to start with. Most of the afternoon was a lot of chain witnesses to lay the foundation for what they are going to be lining up. I assume at the end, when they lay it out and they lay out their timeline about how things went down, and tried to poke holes in the alibi, as I previously said there.
As a criminal defense attorney, what would you be doing? What would you think that the defense team would be doing right now to try and sway the jury in their favor?
Well, I think they did a really good job at trying to humanize Alex with Benfield today. They talked about him having known him and him enjoying his kids and being with them. I think that humanized him, whereas the prosecution, they're trying to demonize him. They did that when they introduced all the weapons, trying to show that, he's got all these weapons. These are, trying to make him look like a bad person, that's dangerous with weapons. That was a good job, I think, of them today with that witness.
Do you think the prosecution is laying out a pretty solid case so far?
I think it's too early to say. I think they're doing a good job. I think they're laying the foundation. I think they've done a really good job at making sure they're getting to the point and not belaboring issues.
Why the fascination with this case? Not only here in South Carolina, but this is just all across the nation. People seem to be just glued in to this trial in little tiny Walterboro, South Carolina.
Well, I think it has to do with, the upper class family that it's affecting. And you wouldn't hear about something like this from a small town. As well as the prominence of the family in that area. I think it has a lot to do with that, as well as the high profile of the attorneys that are involved in this case.
You've seen this trial over the last several days. Do you think right now the prosecution has presented any evidence at all to that jury that Alex Murdaugh is guilty of these crimes?
Well, I haven't seen all the evidence. I don't think the tape really laid anything out there. The I versus they, I think that was clearly a they, having listened to it. The timeline, I think they're trying to poke as to his alibi, as to where he says he was, and I think they're trying to lay that out there. And ultimately, it's up to the jury to decide that at the end after having gathered all the evidence. And I think it's too early to start deliberating on that.
I know you're perhaps not a body language expert, but we have seen Murdaugh in court many times with his head down, rocking back and forth in front of that jury. Any significance to that?
Well, it's hard to put yourself in the place of somebody that's ever been accused of that, having represented folks that are facing life in prison. That's a dangerous area to kind of judge people, because you've never been in that situation, as well as we're talking about very heartfelt moments involving his children and his wife, and it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, but clearly he has some emotions that he's showing. Whether they're good or bad, I don't have that answer.
Early on, the prosecution said this would not be a death penalty case. Did that surprise you?
Well, my take on that is there are aggravating factors here. However, to move forward on a case that quickly, as they have in this case, it would have not been moved on as quick as it had been if it was a death penalty case. There would be a lot more involved in regarding sentencing phase as well. From a criminal defense perspective, looking at the death penalty and what the most heinous crimes are the ones that qualify, and that's a determination for the Attorney General in this case, and he made the decision not to. Is it surprising given that it's a double homicide? Yes and no. I think politically that played a role here in that decision.
We were being told that this trial would probably last at least 2 weeks. With that said, do you think the prosecution will rest before the end of the week, or is this going to drag into next week with their witnesses?
I think the witnesses are going relatively slow. The prosecution's doing it relatively methodical as well. So I don't think that you're probably going to get into the defense until next week.
Okay. All right. Taylor Bell, criminal defense attorney here in Columbia. Thank you so very much for your time and for your insight. I know a lot of people at home are probably like waiting to hear some of those answers, trying to simplify and trying to understand what's going on there.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And of course, as always, you can continue to follow the trial as it unfolds. We're getting that analysis from Midland's experts throughout the week. We have full coverage for you, though, from the courtroom with testimony beginning at 9:30 tomorrow morning. You can watch on WLTX Plus. You can watch on our YouTube channel, WLTX.com, and of course, full team coverage right here on News 19. Again, thank you for your time and have a good night.